University of Toronto. And I'd like to introduce Dwayne McMulkin. If you can open your video. Hello. As the Director of Marketing for Canada's Wonderland, Dwayne and his team are responsible for leading development and execution of marketing and advertising strategies, grow attendance and admission revenue through acquisition and guest development efforts. This includes driving loyalty, CRM, digital marketing, media partnership, and government relationship programs, as well as leading initiatives to reach new audiences and enhance guest experiences. Prior to joining Canada's Wonderland, Dwayne had similar leadership roles with both Toys R Us and Staples Canada. So wow, that's a lot. And I'd just like to remind students to submit their questions on Event Mobi as they pop up. So I'll hand it over to you, Dwayne, and yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, George. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm going to go through the process of sharing my screen. Just let me know if we're in good shape, and then we can get started. So good morning. I'm super excited to be here. I graduated from the management co-op program at UTSC back in 2003, and then spent a couple of years as a marketing instructor at the campus as well. So I still enjoy jogging through the valley and truly appreciate any chance I get to re-engage with the school. So this is great. For the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through my current thoughts on loyalty marketing, which is an area, as George pointed out, I've been responsible for across several organizations for many years, but obviously it's changed a lot since last March too, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll be sure to include some fun behind the scenes stuff about Wonderland, which, to be honest with you, anytime people hear that I work for Canada's Wonderland, you kind of get big eyes, and then they want to know what's going on at the park. So we'll go into that as well. So a little bit about my background and how I became responsible for selling tickets and driving attendance at an amusement park, which isn't necessarily a traditional career that you kind of identify or put on a map that you're working towards. I started as an online marketing specialist with Staples, where I focused on direct marketing and online sales, so things like email, direct mail, website conversion. And this is back before online sales and marketing was really a big thing. So I remember showing up on my first day and being disappointed that I didn't have anything to do with the stores. And this is back when channels were still divided between selling stuff online and selling stuff through the retail stores. So I ultimately grew up there though, became director of marketing and innovation, which was a really cool job because I was responsible for not only loyalty programs, but also coming up with and piloting new revenue projects. I had a store out in Guelph that I was able to play with. We tested new programs like co-working office space memberships, running training classes, really just trying to maximize the revenue per square foot out of our stores at the time. We did some offsite programs as well. One that was really successful was putting digital vending machines into university and college campuses and residence areas. So just to supplement what you were able to get from on-campus stores. And then moved over to Toys R Us, where I had the responsibility to strategically develop and roll out a new loyalty platform from scratch. You don't get the opportunity to take on a project like that too often, especially early in your career. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later in terms of how that all came together. And then finally, I spent the last 4 years growing the customer base at Wonderland, not doing a very good job this year with us being closed. However, when I was initially asked to move over from Toys R Us, the park sold me on the opportunity to launch a new world record-breaking roller coaster and spend Friday nights in the fall at Halloween Haunt. So you can't really say no to that. Going from retail to entertainment was a big industry shift, definitely a knowledge gap. So to speed up the learning, I joined the board of directors for several provincial and regional tourism agencies. And I'm also a mentor with the Ontario Tourism Innovation Lab. I've helped out startup businesses such as Fields of Gold Sunflowers, and I'm currently working with a maple sugar shack up in Northern Ontario, which is a bit different right now. So I promised a little bit more on the background of Wonderland. So here's a history lesson. It's such an iconic attraction in Ontario. It's really quite fascinating to look back through the years at how it's grown. The land was originally purchased in 1972 when Vaughan was literally the middle of nowhere. And when I say the middle of nowhere, I mean it. The park was built with, it had a helipad, an internal medical center, its own fire department, and a holding cell area, all in case of emergency, just because there were no hospitals or emergency responders anywhere close to the park. It took a long time to begin construction. There was lots of opposition to the concept of building an amusement park, complaints about potential noise, traffic, impact on other attractions, and just a general lack of understanding for why the area needed it. Construction began in 1979, and probably the best story about the park is our current general manager was actually a construction worker on the mountain. That's where he started his career. Originally, instead of a mountain, there was supposed to be an Eiffel Tower built, which in hindsight would have just been tacky and odd. So I'm glad we ended up where we are. In a similar stroke of good decision making, Splashworks opened in 1992, and that wasn't originally meant to be a water park. It was supposed to be a massive aquarium for killer whale shows. So given the challenges Marineland faces, I'm glad we ended up with a water park instead. Paramount bought the park in 1994 as a way to diversify their revenue streams and ultimately promote their movies and content. And that's why all the rides at that time were named after movies like Top Gun and Tomb Raider. And then in 1996, Paramount realized they weren't very good at running amusement parks and wanted to focus their business on what they were good at. So they sold 5 parks to Cedar Fair, which is a publicly traded owner-operator of regional amusement parks. Really, you've got 2 big players in that space, Six Flags and us. And that brings us to where we are today, with Wonderland having the 2nd largest collection of roller coasters in the world at 17, over 70 rides, 20-acre water park, 200 attractions. And we're actually North America's most visited seasonal amusement park. So take out the Disneys and Universals who are able to open 12 months of the year. Yeah, that's where we are today. I have no idea when we're going to be able to open back up again, but when we do, we know the demand's going to be there. A little bit about Cedar Fair, because no one would recognize that name. We're at the end of the day, we're in the entertainment of people business. We own several amusement parks, water parks, hotels, and we're now diversifying into adjacent sports complexes. We also have operator agreements in place with amusement parks that are owned by municipalities or local governments who don't know how to run an amusement park, so they hire our company to come in and take care of the day-to-day operations for them. We operate coast to coast. We've got parks in California, Ohio, the Carolinas, Michigan, and of course right here in Toronto. And just from an overall size, each year over 23 million visitors come to our parks, and we employ just over 40,000 associates. So that's what we're hoping to get back to in 2022. So digging in on what my responsibilities with Wonderland and Cedar Fair entail, again, in a typical year, they really aren't that much different than any of the other companies that I've been with, where my primary responsibility has been to focus on the growth of our active customer base. At Staples and Toys R Us, that meant the number of shoppers that we had in stores online, while at Wonderland, we tend to think of this more in terms of the number of unique guests that visit our park each year. Starting point for the marketing strategy is always customer acquisition or convincing someone to visit the park for the first time each season. We spend a lot of time understanding who our target audience for an amusement park is in this particular market. And our market is very different than what the market would be in California or Ohio, for instance. So we do spend a lot of time there. We build out segmentation models, which ultimately influence the products we promote to each segment and how we promote them. Good example here would be consideration given to new rides that we launch. Having something new and exciting creates buzz and awareness for the park each year. Can't always be about roller coasters. I'll let you know who our audience is in a little bit, but it's not teens who are going on rides and want the biggest, fastest all the time. It's actually mom with young kids. So we need to make sure that we're constantly having something that appeals to that segment. This year, for instance, we're launching cliff jumping up in Splashworks and a brand new kids ride. So that's where we are. We've got 3 key audience segments to go after. As I mentioned, mom with a young family. She should really be buying season passes from us each year, just given the value of the pass. We focus on proximity a lot, so really within sort of that 50 to 60 kilometers of the park, make it easy to access each day. Number 2 is teens and young adults who are only likely to come once or twice. And then the third group that we focus on includes groups, which includes corporate outings, school groups, and performance competitions such as bands and cheerleading. When it comes to acquisition growth each year in our marketing strategy, we need to decide if we're going to go after more of the same type of guests. So do we find more moms within our key proximity area, or are we going to look for new audiences and segments to try the park out for the first time? That's where our tourism strategies really start to come in. This could also mean choosing between, like I said, a family in Vaughan and weighing the return on chasing higher penetration of those versus trying to attract someone from Ottawa to visit the park for the first time. So that's our acquisition side. Next step is to ensure we retain our guests and convince those who visit the park that they absolutely need to come back both in the current season and in future years. In some cases, this involves upselling a day ticket purchaser to a season pass or getting a season pass holder to visit more often, as they'll spend more each time they come. Focus here is really on ensuring our acquisition efforts don't go to waste and that our guests come back year after year. And then lastly, once we have someone who enjoys coming to the park on a regular basis, we work on getting them to spend more with us each visit. So that means selling more funnel cakes, beer, t-shirts, and ring toss games. If you've been to the park, I'm a big fan of the Leviathan Lager, so I more than do my part as a guest as well. For the finance people, because at the end of the day, marketing costs money, I always have to break it down for our finance team and let them know how I'm spending our money. This is how we translate our efforts into the bottom line for the company. And when we're trying to really take that customer strategy, which the marketing team likes to focus on, and then we have to dump it into these boxes to show the finance team what we're going to get for it. So for starters, on the x-axis, we divide the business up into our 3 key product types. And then on the y-axis, we overlay an understanding of how much people spend in total on their entertainment in terms of both time and money, and what piece of that Wonderland gets. We would then build out a marketing plan that prioritizes each of the boxes that you see here based on what will deliver the most for the organization. So that's the business model. Again, like I said, not that much different than what was going on at Staples or Toys R Us, all about trying to build up our customer base. So that's how we get into loyalty marketing. So loyalty marketing and the strategies are what really maximize the amount. When I think of it for Wonderland, our loyalty marketing is what maximizes the amount of entertainment time and money our guests spend at the park each year. Holding on to your customers is critical for businesses for several reasons. Mainly because when we talked about acquisition a couple minutes ago, that's really hard and really expensive, is to incent someone to try the park for the first time. Well, acquisition typically, I like to think of it, it fuels a lot of our growth. The retention strategy that we put in place delivers the baseline revenue and profit that really supports the business each year. Returning customers, for example, they usually represent anywhere from about 80 to 90% of our annual revenue. So that's why we focus a lot of our time and energy on our loyalty marketing strategy. That returning guests are also a lot more cost efficient to look after from a marketing perspective. They typically are more engaged with our brand, they're willing to spend more, and they're also the first to try new products. So as we do launch new food items, new games, new paid attractions, they're the first ones to come out for it. Back in 2019, as an example, Wonderland launched a new premium gold pass, which was an upgrade from a season pass, and that it included access to both Halloween Haunt and Winterfest. You paid about $25 or $30 more for a gold pass. 92% of the gold pass purchasers were previously season pass holders as opposed to new guests. One point I want to reinforce at this stage as well is that loyalty marketing, definitely when I started in the field, it had been traditionally associated with a company offering their customers some type of value-added rewards program. So if you think about programs like Air Miles, or the points you get on your credit card, or a quick serve restaurant chain offering a free coffee on your 10th purchase, that's what loyalty marketing was. But the way we've come to look at it now is that driving loyalty that keeps customers coming back and having them tell their friends about the experience really goes well beyond transactional rewards points. When I think of loyalty, I kind of look at it this way. I think of the entire guest experience, both what they experience and feel before they get to the park, while they're in the park, and then after their visit to the park. So it kind of starts with little moments that are easy to lose sight of. For Wonderland, that might be how easy it is for someone to buy their ticket, how easy they get through queue lines and into the park, how clean the washrooms are, how enthusiastic, friendly, and knowledgeable our associates are every time that one of our guests has to interact with them. We then reflect on experiences with the brand. So my wife, at the end of the day, she cares about whether the kids had a good time on the day and whether the family had a great day together. Our guests also care about things like whether they captured photos for Instagram, or if they did something that they couldn't do anywhere else, like watching a 10-year-old experience their first roller coaster. And then finally, at the very top, how does Wonderland manage the relationship with our customers? So when I think about our season pass holders, I want to make sure they feel special, valued, and that they have the opportunity to experience things that are just for pass holders. I want to make sure that they know what's new and exciting about the park ahead of everybody else. And if they do have a bad experience, we want to make sure we handle it properly. Ultimately, what I'm trying to get at is make sure that all of our guests see that they're getting great value for the money they're spending with Wonderland. So with that lens, I want to talk about what keeps our guests coming back and loyal to the park. I tend to focus on 4 key areas. Number 1 is the guest experience. So we do a lot of research, survey research on the park experience and the most important aspects to an amusement park visit. They're not necessarily the biggest rides or the best shows. Typically basic needs like safety, cleanliness, and friendly staff all bubble to the top. If we fall down on any of those, guests just don't come back. Number 2 is being world class. So even though we don't really have a true competitor in terms of another amusement park in the GTA, we know we're competing with lots of other ways for families to spend their entertainment time and money, and that's why we make sure to introduce new and exciting experiences each year. It's also why we do limited time special events in the park, just to give guests reasons to keep coming back within the season. There's also a big group of people We don't necessarily love roller coasters and rides, so we need to ensure that we have something for everyone to enjoy every single visit. Number three is we stay focused on value, which means our guests feel their investment in their time at the park is worth it. When we think about the price of a season pass or a ticket, the fact that it pays for itself in just 2 visits is a strong value proposition. It also gives you access to both the water park and the rides, which is unique in the GTA. The other part of value, and something we're very conscious of, is measuring the daily guest experience. So I can't imagine a worse day than a family coming out and only getting on 5 rides because the lineups are so long. So we make sure that we're offering enough happening in the park on a given day that would never be an experience for someone who spends more than 4 or 5 hours with us. Lastly, we recognize and reward our best guests, our season pass holders. That's where the Pass Perks program comes in. We want them to feel special, which is why we offer exclusive preview nights, early ride times, discounts on tickets for their friends, and in-park discounts on food and drinks. We offer different tiers, so pass holders can choose the right product for them. And we're also going to be launching our new Pass Perks program, as I mentioned, which will be more of a surprise and delight opportunity with in-park freebies and experiences and discounts and rewards to other attractions or restaurants in the off season, which again just adds value to your investment in a season pass. This understanding of who our guests are and managing our relationship and communications with them is all handled through our customer relationship management system. At a high level, it's a data repository for all the information we have on our guests, which tells us who they are, what they buy, how often they visit, how they'd like us to communicate with them for marketing. This one source of information really gives us a single view of who our guests are and allows us to deploy more personalized targeted communications. For guest services, it helps them to have faster access to a customer's account, really just to reduce friction at all of our different touch points. This data management system also allows us to build out predictive models, which helps us identify guests who are showing signs of disengaging, possibly not renewing, or on the acquisition side, it helps us understand those variables in our customer base we should be using to target our acquisition marketing efforts to find new customers. We obsess over the metrics at Wonderland, which is, again, similar to most of the businesses I've been with, but Wonderland's unique because we have such a high identifiable rate. If you think about a retail store, really tough to know who's buying a Lego set at your point of sale or a printer. Lots of times without a loyalty program to match back that customer's information to something, you really don't know anything about your guests. At Wonderland, about 90% of our guests are identifiable either because they bought their tickets online or they have a season pass. We kind of bucket our loyalty metrics into 3 areas. Our leading indicators kind of tell us how we're doing and let us sort of get ahead of any potential issues. Net Promoter Score measures how many of our guests would recommend us to their friends, for instance. We also measure our loyalty program. So take Pass Perks for an example. Are people redeeming the offers we send them? Do they spend more on food and merchandise? Do they even just open the emails or like our Facebook posts for them? And then finally, the metrics we're ultimately trying to achieve through our loyalty marketing efforts: increased renewal rates for season pass holders and higher lifetime value. So that's ultimately what I'm measured on each year, is whether I'm driving those 2 numbers up. A couple quick trends that I'll highlight that I've seen that impact both us and other businesses over the past several months. I think number one, it's really accelerated, the entire COVID-19 challenge has really accelerated digital adoption. So new digital guest experiences, example, using mobile devices during the customer journey, new levels of delivering personalization. At Wonderland, for instance, once we are able to reopen, we'll be reopening with mobile reservations, mobile food ordering, mobile line queuing, QR code use on signs to let you know about upcoming showtime. So all stuff that was more physical in the past has now entirely moved digital. Definitely seeing a love for local. I know my family and I have had a great time exploring new restaurants that we never would have tried before. And so I think as the province starts to open back up as well, everyone's going to be a little bit more stay at home, which is a good thing for us. And so I think everyone's going to be a little bit more willing to shop local and stay local for the first little while. And that's just a habit that's been built up over the past several months. And I think that's why you're seeing on the 4th bullet there, loyalty program participation waning a little bit. It's just not as important earning obscure transactional rewards or miles. It's not as important as finding that kind of next great pizza joint. So we're definitely seeing a big change there. And the last thing that's really popped up over the past several months on the corporate citizenship and responsibility side, we've always done a lot behind the scenes at Wonderland, but we've never been asked to talk about it. I'll give you an example. Our environmental efforts at the park, we send zero waste to landfill. We don't have, even from a power consumption perspective, we don't have air conditioning units in any of the buildings in the park. It's actually the mountain and the waterfall that cools all of the buildings. As the water sort of drips over the mountain, it runs through underground chillers to each of the buildings, and that's what acts as our air conditioning. So we've really been asked to demonstrate how we're supporting a more diverse organization and being a strong corporate citizen. And lastly, I just thought I would end off with some of my favorites from a loyalty program perspective, and kind of 3 different flavors of platforms here. Number 1 is our club from Toys R Us, mostly because it was mine to build, and you kind of need to like your own children more than others. I also still believe in the value it brings to shoppers, though. It isn't based on an obscure point system, but instead focuses on experiences, gives members access to exclusive in-store events like Lego Make and Take Days, early access to new product releases, members-only pricing on certain promotions, and they're automatically entered in contests such as winning trips to Disney World on a regular basis. On the content side, it also helps personalize content to a customer's life cycle. So for instance, we're not sending a mom with 2 kids aged 8 and 11 an email with deals on car seats. We try to personalize it more to where they are in their life stage. Number 2 is Amazon Prime. When it comes to value, this is a membership program I'm willing to pay for, given the elimination of the delivery threshold, the expedited delivery timelines, the TV and video content access. Paid membership programs are really, they've turned into a great way to keep customers loyal. Given your customers have actually invested in the privilege of shopping from you, which is a bit of a strange concept. And finally, PC Optimum, just from a pure cashback perspective, their points program is one of the richest out there. I've got 2 teenage boys at home, so food is my biggest monthly expense. At least I know I'm going to get a piece of that back at the end of the year. And their co-branded MasterCard program, I earn more points with it, and I can also use it towards travel and other experience rewards. So it works really well for my family. So that's 20 minutes of loyalty marketing for an amusement park. And with that, George, if there are any questions, happy to take those as well.
All right, thank you, Dwayne, for such a great presentation. We have actually so many questions that are coming up.
Okay.
So, all right, our first question is, was there any loyalty campaign that you ran over the last year that kept customers engaged?
Great question, actually. So one of the biggest challenges of the past 16 months, especially for a business that's closed entirely or businesses that have been severely restricted, think about retail stores in terms of what they can actually do in their loyalty, in their physical space. For Wonderland, we've been constantly trying to work on how do we stay engaged with our guests and understanding what our brand brings for our guests, which is really fun, family memories, all that type of stuff. How do we connect with them while the park is closed? We've done it in a few ways. It started last year with virtual roller coaster rides. So we essentially had POVs of all of our roller coasters. So you could do sort of guided walkthroughs and rides on big screen TVs. And you saw some parents getting really creative. They had their kids in laundry baskets and they were moving them around to replicate the feeling of the roller coaster. We evolved from there into simple things like releasing our funnel cake recipes so that people could try doing it at home. I just wrapped up actually doing 8 weeks of virtual online trivia nights. It's actually the park's 40th anniversary this year. So, and we had hundreds of people attend every Thursday night for an hour to do virtual trivia about the park and pop culture and stuff that's happened over the last 40 years. On the group side, that's another big customer base for us. We've worked really closely on the educational stuff to actually put together lesson plans for teachers that they can lift on how roller coasters work, the science, the math, art projects, a whole bunch of different stuff. So it's actually been a lot of fun coming up with really unique content that we can use while the park has been closed.
For sure, yeah. No, the product where you talked about the point of view, that was very interesting because AGO actually did something similar where they asked customers to recreate portraits at home.
Yes.
So actually, one of our students asked, how does Wonderland plan to regain customers after reopening post-COVID? Would there be new incentives, better programs, safety, etc.?
Good question. I think the biggest thing that we're going to need to do for 16 months now, because the park has been closed, everyone has just been hearing that amusement parks are not safe places to be. And when you think about your typical park experience, if you go back to what it was like in 2019, it's crowds. It's long lines. It's people running around people screaming on roller coasters, big crowd. It's all the stuff that you shouldn't be experiencing right now. So I think the biggest challenge we have is going to be demonstrating how we're going to be operating safely. Safety's always been, if you think about an amusement park or a water park, safety has to be at the root of everything you do. If you have one accident in the park, you might as well shut down. So for us, our biggest challenge is going to be just demonstrating how you can visit the park safely. And that's going to be things like having capacity limits. So we're not going to open up and have 40, 50,000 people back in the park. We're going to open up and have 5,000 people back in the park at the beginning. Everyone's going to be wearing masks. Everyone's going to have a reservation for when they show up. And we're really going to try and space and keep distance as much as possible. So I think that's the biggest thing that we can do. We have a very large group of loyal guests that we know are going to come back. And so we just need to reinforce with them that visiting an amusement park is a safe place to be.
For sure. So another student asked, in your early on in your career, did you have a mentor early on? And if so, what were some helpful voices that they had?
When I look back I've worked for 3 companies now, and I would say that I've had sort of 3 different leaders that I've worked with along the way that all had very unique strengths. And I've taken pieces away from each of them. So when I was with Staples, the head of marketing there, he was very data driven, very transactional, and everything was about the numbers. So I think that's where a deeper understanding of the metrics and understanding what works, how it contributes to the bottom, what you do contributes to the bottom line. I learned a lot from him on that side. When I moved to Toys R Us, I had a very creative boss. So he was a fantastic storyteller and really knew how to look at an entire calendar year and plan out what the stories that we were going to tell along the way. When we were thinking about launching a new campaign, say for holiday, he always divided it into sort of a pre-launch event, a launch event, and then how do you sustain it. So I definitely picked up a lot on the storytelling side from him. Now that I'm at Canada's Wonderland, I have the privilege to work for a guy who's been in the industry for 25 years. And I would say that he does both of those things, the metrics and the storytelling, exceptionally well. So watching how much emphasis he places on each one at different points in time has been a big opportunity for me to learn.
All right, thank you. So actually, based on piggybacking on kind of the data and the storytelling part, I kind of want to ask another question, which is, given our atmosphere where data is so important, how much has data actually impacted the CSR platforms, and how would you instruct students to use data to their advantage for their career development?
I think it's interesting. So when I joined Canada's Wonderland, we have so much data on so many different platforms. Connecting it all and telling a story with the data was the biggest challenge. So I worked backwards almost in terms of building out, okay, what do we really need to understand to look at how our business is doing? When you look at that sort of customer acquisition, retention, growth model that I showed you, that all the data was there, but no one was looking at it, or no one was using it to tell a story. We understood our attendance on a daily basis. We understood how many passes we were selling, but no one was looking at the underlying customer metrics closely and using them to influence what you were doing from a marketing perspective. So I'll use season pass as an example. We sell almost 80% of our passes in a 5-week blitz leading up to the Victoria Day long weekend in most years. We were able to overlay different sets of data, both with sales, understanding what segments were buying or not buying year over year, and what geographies were buying and not buying year over year. And we would do that on a daily basis. And then we would adjust in certain marketing areas or tactics like digital. So our social media spend, our online advertising, those are probably the 2 biggest channels. You can't really influence TV, radio, out of home advertising, but the stuff that you can turn on a dime, we were able to take that data and say, all right, we're down in moms in Markham. So how do we boost our advertising in Markham to really bring that up? And you know what, that was overlaying that level of data detail into the story that we wanted to tell. Are we down in the acquisition side? Are we down on the renewal side? That really helped deliver the 2019 results that we had. So now we just keep building it out. We took it into the season where it was understanding how frequently our season pass holders were visiting. Are we up or are we down? And then if we're down, it's what can we do in the next 2 weeks to drive an incremental visit and really help grow that particular customer.
All right, thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for coming out today. And yeah, next time when we visit Wonderland, we'll make sure to impress our friends and say, hey, like, did you know that Canada is Wonderland? They cool stuff with their waterfall. And well, thank you for coming.
Yep. No,
All
thanks for
right.
having me. This was great.
Mhm. Thanks.